When I saw flying monkeys in the deep dive requests, well, I have to admit, I thought Wizard of Oz, right?
Right.
But then digging into these excerpts from Truth Serum, Unmasking Toxicity, it's intense. It's way more intense than a singing telegram with wings. This is about like the often invisible force that empowers narcissistic abuse.
It's fascinating and disturbing, isn't it? I mean, this idea, the book defines flying monkeys as, well, they're individuals, often unknowingly, who become extensions of the narcissist's manipulation.
Yeah.
Tools to control, punish, or discredit their target.
Okay, so you've got the narcissist at the center of this whole twisted play, right? They're like pulling the strings, creating chaos, feeding off the drama.
Right.
But they can't do it alone, so they need a supporting cast. This is where the flying monkeys come in.
Yeah.
So it's like Mean Girls, but instead of just social sabotage, like we're talking about some serious psychological damage here.
And the really insidious part is that these flying monkeys, I mean, they often have no idea they're playing a role in someone else's abuse. Truth Serum points out that narcissists are incredibly skilled at identifying and exploiting vulnerabilities.
Right.
So they might target someone with, low self-esteem, someone who's eager to please,
Sure.
or maybe someone who's just naturally drawn to drama.
So these flying monkeys are often victims themselves.
Yeah, caught in this web of manipulation.
Oh, wow.
And the book gives some chilling examples of how this plays out in real life.
Okay.
It could be, well, spreading gossip to discredit the target, or maybe acting as the narcissist's spokesperson.
Yeah.
Relaying hurtful messages, or even like going so far as to gaslight the victim, making them question their own sanity.
It's giving very much Mean Girl, but with way higher stakes.
Right.
And speaking of those stakes, I mean, the book doesn't hold back on the impact this has on the target.
Right.
It talks about feelings of betrayal, isolation, the sense of being like completely ganged up on. You ever felt that kind of pressure where like everyone around you seems to be singing from the same hymn sheet, but it's completely out of tune with your own reality?
Right.
It's incredibly disorienting.
Yeah, it's a form of psychological warfare that can leave the target feeling completely isolated and doubting their own perceptions.
Right.
Truth Serum uses this this incredibly powerful phrase. It says that the target is often left drowning in a sea of gaslighting.
Wow.
Where even their closest relationships become sources of doubt and pain.
And here's where things get really interesting. Almost tragically ironic.
Yeah.
The book describes how flying monkeys often become like the most vocal advocates for reconciliation.
Right.
They push for the targets to forgive the narcissist, to just move on, even when the abuse has been like significant. So wait, haven't you been listening to the same story?
Right. It seems counterintuitive.
It does.
But it speaks to the psychological complexity of the situation. Truth Serum argues that flying monkeys are often grappling with something called, cognitive dissonance.
Okay.
It's that, uncomfortable feeling you get when your actions don't align with your beliefs. You ever felt that?
Oh, right.
Like, you should be doing one thing,
Right.
but you find yourself doing the exact opposite.
Yeah, it's like that internal tug of war where your head is screaming one thing, but your heart or maybe your fear is pulling you in a totally different direction.
Exactly. And for flying monkeys, one way to resolve that inner conflict is to double down on their support of the narcissist.
Wow.
Even if it means minimizing the abuse or blaming the target.
So in a way, it's a self-preservation mechanism for them as well.
Right.
Like if they acknowledge the abuse, they have to confront their own role in it,
Right.
which can be incredibly painful.
Precisely. It's easier to maintain their perception of the narcissist and of themselves as the, good friend or helpful colleague if they can downplay the severity of the situation. And this is where things get really dangerous for the target, because their attempts to set boundaries, to protect themselves, are often met with resistance and anger from the flying monkeys.
So it's like being trapped in this maze where every path you take seems to lead back to the narcissist, and even the people you thought you could trust become obstacles on your journey to escape.
Right.
It's heavy stuff. It makes you wonder, is there any way out for anyone? It's easy to feel like hopeless, right? When you're talking about these dynamics, like everyone's just trapped
Right.
in the narcissist's web with no way out.
Yeah.
But Truth Serum does offer like a glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
It talks about the possibility of like realization, even redemption for flying monkeys.
It's a difficult path, no doubt about it. But the book suggests that it is possible for a flying monkey to break free.
Wow.
It all starts with awareness.
So it's like a light bulb suddenly flickers on.
Exactly. They start to question the narrative that they've been fed by the narcissist.
Okay.
They begin to see the cracks in the facade. They might notice inconsistencies in the narcissist's stories, or maybe start to recognize the patterns of manipulation.
And that's when the real work begins, I imagine.
Absolutely. The book emphasizes the importance of taking responsibility
Yeah.
for your actions, acknowledging the harm that you've caused,
Right.
even if it was unintentional.
Which I can only imagine is incredibly difficult, right?
Yeah.
To realize that you've been like a pawn in someone else's game,
Mm-hmm.
and that your actions have hurt someone, even if you didn't mean to.
It can be a painful and humbling experience, but
Yeah.
Truth Serum argues that it's an essential step towards personal growth, healing.
So what does that look like in practice? Like how does someone who's been a flying monkey even start to make amends?
The book talks about the importance of seeking forgiveness from the target,
Right.
which can be a long and delicate process.
Sure.
It also emphasizes the need to break free from the narcissist's influence, setting firm boundaries and prioritizing your own well-being.
So it sounds like a complete upheaval of your entire world.
It can be. You have to reevaluate your relationships, your beliefs, even like your own sense of self.
And I imagine that's terrifying for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
To like let go of those old patterns.
Yeah.
And like step into the unknown.
It's definitely not easy, but the book presents it as a necessary journey towards a healthier and more authentic way of being.
You know, it's interesting. We've been talking about flying monkeys, like as if they're this completely separate species from narcissists.
Right.
But Truth Serum makes this like really intriguing point.
Yeah.
It says that flying monkeys and narcissists often share certain traits that make them, as the book puts it, effective together in perpetuating abuse.
Right.
What do they mean by that?
It's a fascinating observation. The book points out that both a narcissist and flying monkeys often struggle with empathy. They have a hard time understanding or relating to the feelings of others, particularly the target.
So they're both operating from a place of like emotional detachment, which makes it easier for them to engage in like hurtful behavior.
Exactly. And it creates a kind of feedback loop where the narcissist's lack of empathy reinforces the flying monkey's lack of empathy.
Oh, wow.
And vice versa.
It's like they're feeding off of each other's like worst impulses.
In a way, yeah. And the book also points out their shared desire for control.
Right, right.
The narcissist craves it overtly, right?
Yeah.
They need to be the center of attention, the one calling the shots.
Yeah.
Flying monkeys, while not always seeking control directly, they often get a sense of power from being associated with the narcissist.
Yeah, it's like they become the narcissist's like
Leader.
right-hand man, right?
Yeah.
Which gives them this sense of importance and validation that they might not have otherwise.
Precisely. And because both the narcissist and the flying monkeys, they fear rejection. The narcissist of losing their supply of admiration, the flying monkeys of losing the narcissist's favor, they cling to each other, even tighter.
Oh, wow. So it's almost like this like twisted sort of codependency.
In a sense, yeah. And the book argues that it's this, combination of shared traits
Okay.
and motivations that makes this dynamic so effective.
Yeah.
And so destructive.
Because it creates this united front.
Right.
That's like incredibly difficult for the target to penetrate,
Exactly.
let alone escape.
Right.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
And it makes you realize that these dynamics can be far more complex than like they might appear on the surface.
Absolutely. And it highlights the importance of being aware of these patterns, not just in others,
Right.
but in ourselves as well. Because, we all have the capacity for both.
Yeah.
Empathy and manipulation,
Right.
for good and bad.
It's a sobering thought,
Hmm.
but an essential one to consider. Throughout this conversation, we've been like circling around this other group, the bystanders.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
The often overlooked players in these toxic dramas.
Right. They might not be like actively participating in the abuse,
Yeah.
like the flying monkeys.
Right.
But as we've touched on, their silence can be incredibly damaging.
Silence can be a powerful form of consent.
And Truth Serum doesn't let the bystanders off the hook. It suggests that we should be cautious of them and understand their reasons for inaction.
Right.
That's a pretty strong statement.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Yeah.
It's like that saying, right? All it takes for evil to win is for good people to do nothing.
Exactly. And truth serum really digs into this whole psychology of inaction, you know?
Okay.
It argues that bystanders aren't just like passive observers. They're actively participating in maintaining the status quo.
Because by not speaking up,
Hmm.
by not challenging the abuse,
Yeah.
they're essentially condoning it.
Precisely. And the book identifies several reasons why people become bystanders. One is this idea of diffusion of responsibility.
Right, we talked about that.
Yeah.
The idea that when there's multiple people who witness something wrong, everyone just assumes someone else will like take action.
Exactly. And this often leads to like collective inaction, right? No one wants to be the one to rock the boat, especially if they like fear repercussions.
Which is completely understandable, but also incredibly frustrating.
Right.
Because it allows this like cycle of abuse to just continue unchecked.
It's a difficult dilemma, and truth serum doesn't offer any easy answers.
Right.
But it does encourage us to be more aware of our own tendencies
Okay.
towards inaction, to ask ourselves like why might we be hesitant to speak up,
Right.
and to consider the potential consequences of our silence.
It's a call to action in a way, right?
It is.
A reminder that we all have a role to play in, like creating a safer and healthier world.
Yeah.
You know, this deep dive has been incredibly eye-opening. Before we started, I have to admit, I thought flying monkeys was just like a quirky little detail from, The Wizard of Oz.
Right.
But this book has like shown me just how pervasive, how destructive these dynamics can actually be.
They're everywhere.
Yeah.
In our families, our workplaces, our social circles.
Right.
And, the more we understand about them, the better equipped we are to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And others.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power.
It is.
So for our listeners, if you're feeling disturbed, intrigued, or maybe even like a little seen by this conversation,
Yeah.
I highly recommend checking out Truth Serum, Unmasking Toxicity.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it's a journey into like the dark side of human behavior,
Right.
but one that ultimately offers a path towards, healing, empowerment.
And the reminder that none of us are immune to these dynamics.
Right.
We all have the potential to be manipulated,
Yeah.
to be bystander.
Right, and the key is to be aware of those potentials, to choose differently.
To choose compassion, to choose courage, and to choose to create a world where abuse has no place to hide.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought-provoking question from Truth Serum.
Yeah.
What responsibility do we all have to challenge toxic behavior, even if we're not directly involved?
Let that question be a starting point for reflection, for conversation, and for action.
Because the fight against abuse is a collective one.
It is.
And it starts with each and every one of us.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay safe.